Just to let you all know, we are live streaming now.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, sincere apologies. I know my counsel, I mean, I was listening to Dominic and Sinead having this conversation about governance services and some kind of a declaration of interest. And then I got thrown out of the meeting, then I logged back in and then I got thrown out again. So I've thrown that laptop outside. I've joined on another laptop. So just in case it was infecting my, I think there's something wrong with the council IT this morning because some of the stuff I'm trying to get on the other computer, I can't just join it. Okay, welcome everybody. I see we've got a really good attendance, 29 people today. I mean, we did actually send an email far and wide. So thank you for all of you who are joining. I see Mr. Masood is on and Pete is here also. So we've got the operators here. Who else is? I've got Tom. That was he's most important here today's meeting because me and Andrew were sweating a little bit if Tom was going to turn up or not because so Tom is doing the item 9. So I'm just going to ask everybody in the meeting if everybody's okay for us to actually move item 9 just before item 6. So once we've done up to item 5, then if we can actually do the connectivity infrastructure for Tom to actually deliver that, and then we will take the rest of the agenda. If everybody's in agreement for that, is that okay? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I haven't received any apologies for absence. Have we got any, Dominic?
Yes, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Pennington, Gareth Logan, Nora McWilliam, and Graham Meiklejohn from Transpennine.
Okay. Anybody else knows anybody else that may have got in touch with them? No? Any declaration about interest? Other than, I mean, for councillors, if they've already declared some of this stuff. Sinead?
Unmuted now. Yeah, aside from, well, we're not aware until Dominic Martin's checked this out, whether I need to declare a pecuniary interest because I've been appointed chair of Bradford Council's Education Appeals Panel. It's not a policy-making role. The role is to decide on a case-by-case basis applications from parents for Bradford Council to fund their child's school transport costs. So I don't believe it is necessary to record it, but just in case. And obviously, I'm a parent of children who use, well, one of my children uses the public buses that I pay for her ticket to get to and from school. That's all.
Okay, thanks for that, Sinead. Anybody else? I mean, Dominic, what we do is, I mean, we actually do have the declaration of interest registered at the beginning of every term. So ours will be in there because, I mean, I work for the company, for a bus company, so, but mine is already registered. So if you can check that with for Sinead, and then if we can register that if we need it. Okay.
Will do. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks. There is exemption information, exclusion of public. We haven't got anything, not that I've seen it. Okay. So Tom, without any further ado, over to you, young man.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all on this Monday afternoon to talk about West Yorkshire Connectivity Plan. So my name's Tom Gifford and I work for West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and I'm overseeing much of the work around mass transit, but also a lot of the work around the connectivity plan. And I'm supported today by James Nutter, who's also on the call. It's waving there if you can see him. James is going to help answer particular questions around the rail space, Northern Powerhouse Rail, as well as some of the local rail matters within Bradford. So James is here as well to help, and obviously we've got Andrew Bradley, who's more in the bus space as well and able to help answer questions around kind of buses, and we're supported by the bus operators here today as well. So it's fantastic to see you all. I've got some slides, and as Councillor Slam set out, today's main item of the agenda is to talk around the connectivity plan and get feedback on it as part of the engagement which we're doing at the moment. And today's a really helpful conversation in that space. So let me open up the slides and bring them up onto the screen. So hopefully, if someone could just nod to say that they can see them on their screen, that would be really helpful. They should be appearing now. Yeah, Dominic's nodding. That's fantastic. So the plan for today is to just talk you through the slides. If people have got questions as we're going through, that'd be fantastic. If you could put them into the chat function initially, that'd be really good. And then we'll try and either pick them up as we're going through or at the end. And indeed, if we've got questions at the end, which I'm sure you will do, we can have a conversation around the questions as well. Please try and use the hand function, which is available through Zoom, to raise your hand to ask any questions. And we will try and answer the questions as best and as fully as we can today. And it's probably worth saying that all the material I'm going to be talking through is available on the website, and we'll share a link to that on the website shortly. And the session today is recorded, and we'll be uploading the video onto YouTube, and then you'll be able to watch the video back for posterity on the website as well. And we'll provide a link to where that's saved on the website. And we'll be taking notes as we go through, because we really want your feedback through the engagement of particular points and comments made. So if there are any comments you think we need to pick up in the engagement, or any things which you like or dislike, or particularly want to understand further, then do get in contact. And that's the key message for today, really, is we really want your feedback. So as I'm talking through the plans, if there's things you think we should change, if there's things you think we need to reflect on further, if there's things you think you like, then we really want to hear. And you can respond in 3 ways. So you can either respond by completing the survey form on the website, or send us an email, or take part in the interactive map. And the interactive map is available on the website link as well. And those are the key ways to kind of provide kind of written feedback. But we're also happy to have follow-up one-to-ones with anyone on the call. So if there's anyone particularly wants to discuss further beyond what we get into today, maybe we don't get into an issue in enough detail, or you want to kind of have a side conversation, then please do get in contact and we'll try and set that up. But anyway, that's probably enough of an intro. Now we better crack on with talking through the material. So first thing is what we're going to be talking today about is one slide on the combined authority and West Yorkshire, and then jump straight into the West Yorkshire Connectivity Infrastructure Plan, and particularly thinking about what it means for Bradford and the mass transit vision piece as well. And then we'll get into next steps, and then we'll get into questions. So, the final thing to do is, if you're not on mute as we're going through, I'd really appreciate it if you put your screen on mute. Just double check now for a moment, just to make sure you're on mute, because otherwise we get everyone else may not be able to hear so clearly. So, first slide, West Yorkshire. I'll do this really quickly. We all know West Yorkshire is a really big, UK PLC, 55.4 billion pound economy, bigger than many EU countries, and it's fair to say that Leeds and Bradford combined are themselves bigger than any other area in England outside of London. So it's a really significant economy to the north, but also to the UK PLC, with a number of major universities, regional finance centres, more manufacturing jobs than anywhere else in the north. And I think it's important not to lose sight of the strategic importance of West Yorkshire to UK PLC. And West Yorkshire is obviously made up of the 5 districts of Leeds, Bradford, Kirklees, Calderdale and Wakefield. So what does the combined authority do? Well, obviously it does all the transport provisions, as you're well aware of, through the Metro brand. But beyond that, in addition to that, we also have a number of provisions around adult education budgets, business growth hubs, enterprise advisors, skills programs, and we're also the accountable body for the LEP, the Leeds City Region Local Enterprise Partnership, as well as developing and delivering a range of projects across transport and beyond. And obviously the remit of the combined authority is growing, particularly with the mayor coming into post in May, and devolution, which has gone around that. So that increases our voice as a region, hopefully brings in more funding for the region, and increases the status and role of the areas which the combined authority will get into. As an example, the Police and Crime Commissioner functions are transferring into the combined authority in the coming months as well. So we're here today to talk about the connectivity plan for West Yorkshire. So back in January, we published the very first West Yorkshire Connectivity Infrastructure Plan. And this is a really important step change from where we've been previously. And the connectivity plan includes a series of documents. It's not just about one particular mode. It's around how bus, walking and cycling, rail, mass transit, future mobility come together in a single integrated plan for the region. And the plans and the proposals within them are supported by a series of evidence reports. The engagement opened in January and it runs until the 11th of April. And we really want to hear your feedback to it. And as I said, all the material is available on the website, and we really want to hear as much feedback on the plans as possible. So the connectivity plan and case for the different modes, including mass transit, have been built up from evidence, focusing on those communities of greatest economic need, the key employment and housing growth centres, and the transport environmental constraints across the region. So the focus of the plan is really built up from evidence, and it's really important to highlight that the plans are developing a pipeline of infrastructure, but it's really the start of the process rather than the end. And this is the first time we've had a plan like this, and so it will need to evolve, it will need to change, and we really want your feedback to make sure that it reflects the priorities of the region. The plan's really ambitious, and it's a big ambition for the future. So I'm going to carry on. Councillor Engel, I can see your hands up. Would you like to come in at this point, or shall I carry on?
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think one of the biggest things for me and my family, neither myself nor my husband has ever had a driving lesson in our lives. We are entirely reliant upon our own legs and public transport. One of the biggest things for us is continuity of service. You know, we'd like to be able to buy a ticket that can take us anywhere in West Yorkshire on any mode of transport without having to go to one of the big transport hubs. We'd like to go to the bus stop at the end of our street if you know what I mean. And I know that is an incredibly difficult thing to achieve with so many different companies in operation. Certainly my 12-year-old is groaning at me every day because I just get her a first bus ticket, a weekly bus ticket for a school run. And she stands there at the bus stop and watches Keighley bus after Keighley bus going past that she can't get onto. And she's not alone. Many of her friends have the same problem. So I think sort of that continuity and convenience of ticketing and cross-platform and cross-company thing is of paramount importance, actually, when it comes to the practicalities for the service users. And I'd like to see that given full priority.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really well made point, Councillor Engel. And this plan and its broader transport strategy aims is all around trying to create a more integrated public transport offer, so it's easy to use for customers to try and so for those people who don't have a car, they can travel by public transport really straightforwardly and use different modes as they need to get from where they need to travel to and from, but also to encourage people who are currently car drivers out of their cars and into public transport. The plan today focuses more on the infrastructure side, so the physical interventions which we need to come forward, but targeted ticketing is really important as part of that mix. And I think when we get into Q&A, I might bring in Andrew to talk around the where we've got to on some of the integrated transport ticketing measures at the moment, to go through them a bit more. But I'm going to carry on the slides for now, and then we can come back to the integrated ticketing a little bit further when we get into the slides, if that's okay. Because I think it's a very well made point. So in terms of the slides, we were just talking around the ambition and setting the scene for it. And I think there are three big challenges facing our region, and we see those as the recovery from COVID. Will people want to travel in the future? What does this mean for travel moving forwards? How do we support our towns and city centres post-COVID? Connecting everyone and creating that more inclusive, accessible society for our region. And the third area being around the climate emergency and that challenge around, well, if we have a net carbon zero target of 2038, what transport measures do we need to put in place to support that? And we as a region have done a really large piece of work looking at carbon emissions across different sectors of the economy. So looking at all the different sectors of and where carbon emissions are produced. And through that work, we've established that transport sector is the largest emitting sector of carbon emissions in West Yorkshire. And within transport, the private car is the largest emitting mode of transport of carbon emissions. So if you want to address the big things and reduce your carbon emissions, you really need to address the level of private car trips within West Yorkshire. Now that sets some interesting policy choices, which we'll come back to in a moment. So as a region, we see those three big challenges around inclusivity and connectivity, recession and recovery, and climate change. And I think the other point is that we don't see them as individual ones which you can do in series. We need to tackle all three of those concurrently. So this plan is one of the first of a number of maps I'm going to bring up today. And what this map shows is some of those key growth areas for the region and those areas most in need of economic support. And this is important because this is the first time as a region we will have brought all of this information together at a West Yorkshire level, stitching together all of the growth areas, housing growth, employment growth areas, various local plans, together with the areas in greatest need across the region. And this is really important because before you design a transport system for a region or for an area, it's important to understand the function of the places now and into the future. And I think understanding the function helps to define then what you want to achieve with the transport offer moving forwards. So this just exactly the same, but just zooms in and you can see greater clarity around the role of the growth areas within Bradford in particular. So we can see some of those growth areas, spatial priority areas and the like, picking out Homewood as an example, Appley Bridge, Shipley and Bradford city centres, and also Keighley to the north. So you can see those key growth areas and the areas most in need of economic support. And this map is in the plan, is all available in the material which has been published. And building on the evidence, the plan's got six priorities, 6 local priorities. So it's got the ones highlighted here: walking and cycling becoming the first choice for shorter journeys. The bus being at the heart of the plans, with networks revitalised post-COVID. Rail serving trips to our main centres, particularly the kind of main urban centres. A new form of mass transit link, providing that missing link in our transport system, particularly on the higher demand corridors. Cars and vans still being important, but just being used less, and particularly accelerating the transition to electric vehicles. But even that alone is unlikely to help meet our net zero carbon targets. And a focus on international connectivity in a post-Brexit world. So those are the priorities, and wrapped around those is a series of policies. So how do we then do the integrated ticketing across different modes which works together? But the plan really here today is focused more on the infrastructure which needs to support these priorities. And alongside those local priorities, we also have a series of intercity regional priorities. So these focus more on the rail space. So investment in the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade Programme, and seeing that programme delivered in full for connectivity of an upgrade of the existing lines. And the same goes with the East Coast Main Line, upgrade of the East Coast Main Line, the electrification of the Calder Valley route, and then the 2 new lines around HS2 serving Leeds, and Northern Powerhouse Rail serving Manchester, Bradford City Centre and Leeds. And when James comes in a bit later on, he might talk a bit about the material which has been in the press today around Northern Powerhouse Rail and what it means. So building up from the evidence, this is one of the key maps which is included in the plans. And what it highlights is, based on all the evidence of key employment centres, housing growth areas, the transport constraints, environmental constraints, the key modes and how they integrate together at a West Yorkshire level by the different modes. So you can see here the places where there's the opportunity for mass transit, the opportunity for longer distance rail, local bus and cycling. Now it's quite a strategic map, it's quite high level, but it's the first time as a region we will have stitched it all together to show the ambition at a regional level. And part of the question today which we're asking is, have we identified the right modes and the right places to connect? Are we looking at the right types of solutions in different parts of the region? And it might be that we need to evolve this further, but particularly picking up on the comments so far, understanding whether we're going in the right direction. And then what we do, the next few slides, then get into the mass transit piece. Councillor Engel, I can see you've got your hand up again. Do you want to pick up your comment now, or can we pick it up in the Q&A session at the end?
I'll do it now before it goes out of my head. I mean, historically, rail lines have followed natural basins, generally along water courses, because they tended to be flat and more convenient when the rail lines were first built. To how much extent has climate change and increased flood risk been considered when we're looking at where new lines go? Because that really does feel very important to me. Flooding causes horrific disruption as it is, without the propensity to take out transit streams.
That's a good question. So there's probably 2 aspects I've come back into that. First one is around climate change. It's more kind of fundamental statement that our need to get people out of their cars and provide a quality and sustainable alternative to the car. So that's the number 1 priority, is getting people out of the car and providing a high quality alternative. That's what this plan focuses on. In terms of route options, I think I'll come back to that question when we get into the mass transit piece, and I'll make sure I answer that as we go through, because it's a really well made point, and it's something which we really do need to make sure is picked up in the plans, particularly at the next stage of work when we're looking at the more detailed route options. I'll come back to that if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
So then carrying on through the slides. So the next few pages then focus on the mass transit vision, which was published as part of the connectivity plan. And this sets out a bold and ambitious proposal for a new transport system to support to make West Yorkshire greener, more inclusive and better connected. The vision is on the website, and the documentation sets out more detail than I'm going to go through today. And we really do want your feedback on it. The case for mass transit focuses on how a low carbon mass transit system can support the recovery from COVID, support the transition to a net zero carbon economy, provide seamless integration between modes, and support communities across the region. Mass transit is, the plan sets out how mass transit sets out those key communities where there's the greatest economic potential and case for mass transit to be delivered. This map is the first time as a region we have illustrated that integration between the various modes and the role which mass transit could play in filling the gaps in our transport network. As part of the engagement, which is now open, we're asking you, have we identified the right places to be connected? Do you agree with the vision? And we've identified on this map some of those key places where there is that opportunity to connect by transit. And then in the following few slides, we set out a bit more detail on the detailed places within it. But really the plan here starts to get into setting the opportunity, and it doesn't get into route options, because before we do a lot of work on route options, we want to make sure that we're looking at the right places, making sure that we reflect the kind of community and the ambitions of the region. So we don't want to do a lot of abortive development work if people say, hang on a minute, we're looking in the wrong place. So we really want to make sure that we've understood the evidence and we understood the local priorities for Bradford in particular. So that's the mass transit vision. And in the vision document, what it does is it then highlights by different colours, different corridors. And the vision document then provides more detail, including tube maps and a narrative and explanations for why individual corridors have been identified. So you've got here the orange line between Leeds and Bradford, and the tube map here, and then a narrative around why these have been identified, but then how it fits with other modes. So just taking this one as an example, you can see NPR, Northern Powerhouse Rail, provides that super fast connectivity between Manchester, Bradford City Centre and Leeds. The Calder Valley Line continues to be incredibly important between Bradford City Centre and Leeds, but also can kind of have a greater focus on connecting some of those communities beyond Bradford towards Hebden Bridge, Todmorden and the like. And mass transit's role is then connecting some of the communities between Leeds and Bradford and getting them into the major hubs of the city centres. And the same goes with the other corridors. I'm not going to go through them all, but the detail is all there within the vision document. The types of technologies we're looking at 4, and this builds on the worldwide market testing we did around mass transit technologies last year, where we spoke to around 120 different suppliers of light rail, tram, bus rapid transit, operators, manufacturers of these types of mass transit systems. And their feedback has helped to shape the technologies we're bringing forward here in the mass transit vision. And whilst the names might appear familiar, the technologies have innovated significantly in the last 10 to 20 years. So there's been significant cost savings in terms of how you can deliver them, as well as kind of significant innovations in the types of propulsion technologies available. So you now have battery and hydrogen powered vehicles which don't require all the overhead catenaries, so all the electric wires, which can be a particular townscape and visual impact in sensitive areas of the region. And there's also lots of new innovations coming forward in the ultralight rail space. Coventry is at the forefront of that at the moment. We're working closely with peers down in the West Midlands. But before we jump into the design and the route options for mass transit in detail, we want to make sure we've set some really strong foundations so that when we do come forward to route options and choices for different corridors, they had kind of built up from 4 design principles. And those design principles are around putting people first, our shared environmental responsibility, creating a better connected West Yorkshire, and celebrating the cultural and historic assets of the region. Now, these are really important because if we get these right, then they help to shape how we design the system coming forward. So putting people first is obviously around that affordability integration point, but also around making it step-free access, multiple doors, creating safe and inclusive spaces. Environmental responsibility, that's all around making sure the infrastructure is resilient to climate change, and landscaping which promotes biodiversity and providing an attractive alternative to the car. Better connected is all around that integration between buses, mass transit, walking and cycling, and local rail, so that it's seamless from a customer perspective of travelling across modes. And I think this is really important because mass transit is just one part of the journey. People will walk, cycle to from their home to a stop, and then maybe use the bus for a couple of stops and then get onto mass transit. And we need to make sure we've got the ticketing products which allow people to do that seamlessly and easily. So it's much more than just an infrastructure program. It's how do you then wrap it around and deliver a product which people want to use. Then in the final slide around mass transit, before we move on to the other modes, we've got a slide here around accelerating its delivery. And obviously our move to become a mayoral combined authority changes some of the conversations going on with central government. And in the budget, a couple of weeks back now, the government announced an intra-city transport fund settlement, £4.2 billion fund, which first phases of mass transit types of projects from mayoral areas can come forwards from. And so we potentially have some funding to be able to bring forward the first phase, but we're unable to fund all of this at the moment. It's a really big ambition, and it will take a number of years to come forwards and develop. We do in this map here highlight some candidate options for phase one. So you can see in a slightly darker shade of teal, the Bradford, Leeds, Dewsbury triangle, connecting towards East Leeds as well, are highlighted at places where there's that opportunity for a first phase to come from. Now, there's a lot of development work to do. And before we do that development work, we really want to test through this engagement, have we identified the right places to connect by transit? And that, keep coming back to it, but that's really what we need to hear through the engagement. Development work will take time, and but at the same time, there are a number of other schemes which we're looking to bring forward as a region. And as I move into where we got to with the other modal plans, we'll then come into what it means for Bradford District in the short, medium and longer term. So walking is absolutely at the heart of the connectivity plan as well. And by 2040, every neighbourhood, village and town should be easy to access and move around by a pedestrian or a cyclist. And it's the cycling and walking vision identifies a series of network principles around coherence, comfort, attractiveness and safety, for example. Bus is also at the heart of the plans, and we talk around wanting that bus service to be revitalised post-COVID. And you may have heard in the press last week, Boris and central government announcing the national bus strategy, which opens the way to greater partnership working, as well as paves the way potentially for some areas to reconsider the approach to franchising as well, and £3 billion to support the development of the buses across England. So it's a welcome step forwards, and we can come back into that later on if we need to. Rail. James Nutter will join us for the Q&A session at the end to talk about the rail vision. We've got a rail webinar later on this evening where we'll be talking and unpacking the rail vision in more detail. The rail vision really sets the framework and direction of travel for the region as a whole and what we want to achieve moving forward. It sets a series of criteria and pipelines for the future. So the last few slides, and then I'll stop talking and open it to questions. I can see a few are coming up in the chat already. The last few slides are setting out priorities for the programme, and the way that obviously the plan identifies proposals for walking and cycling, bus, rail, mass transit across the different modes, but it also sets priorities in 3 programs: schemes for delivery in the short term by 2025, strategic priorities for development by 2025, and options for delivery thereafter. So what does this mean for Bradford? Well, obviously, as I said at the beginning, the plans are all built up from the perspective of growth. Understanding that function of places now and into the future is so important. And then what the plan does in the short term is it identifies those key schemes which are coming forwards already, and most of these schemes are funded and coming forwards already. So here we talk to a number of the new cycle superhighways which are coming forwards, either through our Transforming Cities Fund programme or through the other broader funding programmes such as Transport Fund. Thornton Road here is highlighted, but there are others coming forwards as well. Walking and cycling in the city centre and making the city centre a more pedestrian and cycle friendly environment. City Connect Phase 3, which around Shipley along the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, as well as walking and cycling along the Canal Road corridor as well. The plan also identifies more people to use public transport, and we talk around the redevelopment of Bradford Interchange, additional platforms at Bradford Foster Square, and the additional enhanced passenger facilities at Bradford Foster Square as well. It then gets into smart guideways towards on Manchester Road and the new park and ride proposed in South Bradford, as well as new and additional car parking spaces at a number of railway stations in Bradford. A couple of highlighted there, but there were more. And then it also identifies the need for some localized enhancements to the road network. So again, I just highlight a couple of them here. So these are some of the shorter term priorities. And then at a regional level, across the different modes, this is more reiterating some of the things which we talked about at the beginning, the need for further phases of City Connect and walking and cycling networks, kind of moving towards more neighbourhood improvements for walking and cycling, as well as from a bus, developing our and strengthening our partnerships with the bus operators and continuing to review the case for bus franchising as well. From a rail perspective at a regional level, it's around that Transpennine route upgrade, MPR serving Bradford and Leeds, and delivering HS2 Phase 2 to be to government. Mass transit is about getting on with it and accelerating development, listening to feedback, and making sure that the plans evolve to reflect the feedback which come out through the engagement. Cars and cycling, cars and roads. Well, this is really focusing on that transition to alternative fuels, as well as the sustained investment to maintain the road network. This is something which we know is always high on the list of priorities, as well as examining the case for introducing highways demand management to address the climate emergency to reduce trips. So there's a range of regional priorities, and from a Bradford perspective, what does this mean in the longer term? Well, we know that significant numbers of people rely on the bus. It's around 32 million annual trips in Bradford on the bus. And growth is possible if we can make the bus more attractive through reducing journey times and encouraging integration, ticketing integration, as was highlighted earlier. And we know that there is a rail gap in Bradford to the rest of West Yorkshire and beyond to Manchester. In the shorter term, we can invest in longer trains on the Wharfdale and Airedale lines through to Bradford Foster Square, but we need to get Bradford better connected, and MPR is part of the solution to that. Through MPR at Bradford, it will change the way people travel. It will give people new journey opportunities which they can't make at the moment. So we're connecting Bradford from places like Heathley rather than having to go to Leeds and onwards to Manchester. And this all needs to be integrated with mass transit. And we've talked already about a number of the corridors which mass transit is looking to address. So that almost summarizes the plan, but the one thing I just wanted to highlight is the upcoming webinars. So we've got one this evening on rail, and all these webinars will be recorded and also put on the website. So we've already held one on mass transit, which has talked through much of the material we've talked through today. There's a walking and cycling webinar coming up tomorrow, a transport decarbonisation challenge webinar, as well as a bus webinar. So there's a number of these events coming up. And as I said right at the outset, we've also been holding a series of kind of more specific events with targeted groups. If there's more groups you'd like us to talk to around the proposals, we are more than happy to do that as well. So part of today's conversation is, are there groups which you would like us particularly to speak to? And just, we're also aware that we are doing this engagement at a time when we're all in lockdown, and it's particularly challenging to meet with some groups, to have the conversation with some groups. So if there's anything which you think we can do to help in that space, then do get in contact and we will try and do that as best we can. And we just need to recognise also we can only do so much in lockdown. We might need to come back to some of these areas post-lockdown when we're all able to meet face-to-face as well. But Councillor Slam, I'm about to hand back to you for comments and questions. I hope that's been a helpful conversation to everyone. And then I would really like to get into kind of individuals from the calls, kind of challenges, opportunities, etc., views on where we've got to. So Councillor Slam, at that point, shall I hand back to you? And I'm more than happy to come back to any individual questions.
Thanks.
As discussed.
That's a lot of information to take in such a short period of time. I hope people have actually got the gist of it. Like Tom says, all these documentations are available and have actually been sent with the agenda. So there's a lot more information on in some of the links that are actually on the with the papers. There are a number of questions in the chat box, Tom. There's one from James regarding the connectivity, the local plan, and this Wednesday is the deadline, and therefore is Bradford Council are going to be sharing that information with the authority. Then there is also a couple of questions from Councillor Corsa regarding students or young people not being able to access some of the facilities.
Okay.
Have you got them?
Yes, I can see those. So just starting from the top of this, and I think there's some really interesting comments coming through in the chat function. So I'm just looking at obviously there's the Bradford local plan, which is out at the moment as well, isn't there? And that's got a closing date, I think, of this week, hasn't it, for comments? I think that's
Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. We obviously behind the scenes, we've been developing the connectivity plan with Bradford Council officers, and so there's been sharing of all of the material with Bradford Council officers, and that's helped to bring them together. But absolutely, the local plan and the local plans for West Yorkshire have been fundamental to shaping where the growth is and understanding where the growth opportunities could be for the region, and we need to make sure we continue to do that. The other way to look at this is that the maps and the plans we highlight here in the connectivity plan can then help to refocus proposals in future local plans, because they identify those areas for growth and they identify the key areas where investment in transport could be prioritised. And so that might allow certain areas to be kind of intensified or change in land uses or look at it in a different way. So it's absolutely essential that transport is derived from the local plan, but then there's the opportunity for the local plan to then be reevaluated and reconsidered in the light of the connectivity proposals. There are some more detailed questions in here about walking and cycling, and what I'd really propose is that some of those questions we pick up at the walking and cycling webinar, when we'll have kind of officers who are specialised in the walking and cycling space. But absolutely, the plans really need to focus on kind of making walking and cycling the right choice for the future. And if there's particular areas around that, either geographically or thematically, which you want us to pick up, then absolutely we can do that. There's another really good question in the chat about, can we just get on with this around walking and cycling, and why do we have to wait till 2040? I think it was James Craig who made that comment, and I think we absolutely agree with that as well. We just need to crack on here, don't we? We need to make progress much more quickly, and I think in part what's driving the timescales is the funding availability from central government, and I think for me it's not the competition between modes, all the modes need investment. So we need to invest in bus, we need to invest in walking, cycling, we need to invest in mass transit. There has been a historic underinvestment in transport in the north, and this plan is part of that vision to set out, if we had the funding, then these are the types of things which we would want to bring forwards. And a part of the feedback we have received so far is just, we need to get on with it. So there's a really interesting message in there, isn't there, around that. I can see, Chair, there's some comments. There's some hands in the.
Yeah,
well.
I've got Councillor Rebecca Paulson.
Oops. Hi, Taj.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. Thanks for letting us all attend today to your meeting. Yeah, just something. Obviously, Tom, you'll be aware that Bradford is bidding to be City of Culture. And really focusing on a lot of regeneration, etc., going forward on culture and that sort of environment. One of the omissions on the slide seems to be Haworth isn't mentioned on any of the slides. There's just a big green mass between Keighley and Hebden Bridge, where one of the key tourist areas for the Bradford district isn't mentioned. Also, one of the key routes for the people in this area is going over to Hebden Bridge on the bus network and then the train over to Manchester. That is how a lot of people access work. But it doesn't even show on the bus route map that you've put up that there's even a bus connection between sort of Haworth, Keighley and Hebden Bridge, which is a really important route. So that would be one of my obvious things that seems to have been missed out completely. And the Keighley-Worth Valley Railway train line isn't on the map either. So I'm not quite sure why they're not included when they're so key for us going forward as a district.
Absolutely. And Chair, if it's okay to come back in on this, I think on the Keighley-Worth Valley line, well, it should be in the plan. So if it's not come out clearly enough, that's an omission, and we will address that. That's absolutely fair point. On the buses, absolutely, again, we've highlighted on these maps the core network rather than necessarily all the supported services which go around it. So the plans are focused here on the core network. I will ask the bus colleagues to come in around the kind of the bus service and the proposals around Keighley towards Hebden Bridge, and because I think for me we need to bring that out maybe more, and maybe in the bus piece which sits around this we haven't talked around what it means for the broader bus networks and opportunities around services. But if there are areas where you think, well, actually, we haven't quite brought that out enough, then maybe we need to go back and reevaluate that in the plans. But Andrew or one of the operators, would you like to say anything around buses and connections towards Keighley and the like?
Jim Craven. I mean, Jim is from Transdate, so Jim could actually maybe able to.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Jim.
Hi there. Yeah. As it stands at the moment, we do operate an hourly service to Hebden Bridge and back. That's a B3 service which goes to Haworth, Oxenhope, and then down into Hebden Bridge. That's, like I said, that's an hourly service there and back, Monday to Friday and Saturdays, and we do operate one on a Sunday as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. Andrew, I mean, do you want to come in, or Rebecca? Is that?
No, I'm happy to just come in briefly to say that I think you're absolutely right. We do need to consider all of these connections that are being made by people, particularly when we're talking about access to work. That's absolutely key. So it's really important that we capture some of this in what we're doing, so that we don't just look at the big stuff, but we actually capture the things that impact on everybody's lives, and that applies, I guess, both to the bus services that you mentioned, but also the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway as well. So thanks for making those points there.
Okay. I mean, we did ask for operators. I'm not going to sort of overlook, Dwayne or Mohammed Raja. I mean, do you guys have anything to say on this one? I'm not really sure whether you guys actually run any services that way.
I think, Taj, from our perspective, the nearest that our services would get towards Hebden Bridge would be services from Bradford to Halifax, and then for any connecting services through from Halifax to Hebden Bridge. So direct link from Bradford, there's obviously not anything there. I suspect the train would probably more of a better option for customers who want to use that.
Thanks for that. Dwayne?
And yeah, likewise, Taja, for ourselves, we've not really got anything in that area.
Rebecca, does that sort of addresses your...
I mean, yeah, and I'm well aware of the service and, you know, what runs on that route. My point was that it doesn't seem to be included within the PowerPoint that we've just seen at all. It seems to be very much missing, and given the cultural, you know, things we're all aiming for in the district, I think it needs to be brought out a lot clearer in the documents.
I think that's helpful, and I think we haven't really gone into the bus network review piece today. There's a sitting alongside of the connectivity plan and the mass transit piece and some of the walking cycling proposals. There's a specific piece of work which looks at the bus network and what we can achieve with it. And in that piece, we've looked at where the future travel demand is and what the opportunity is by bus, and that gets into individual areas in a much more detail. And I think the slides which you brought up today, there's only so much we can show on the maps at a West Yorkshire level, but I think maybe there is a number of areas where we could maybe highlight particular communities more. So the Haworth point is well made, particularly in the light of the City of Culture and the ambitions in Bradford around that. So let us go back into as part of the engagement and come back to you on that. I think we can highlight that more clearly in the plans.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Chair. Thank you.
No problem, Rebecca. I mean, there is a specialist bus working group also that is looking at the whole bus network and Transport for North. So we are, you know, I mean, that's something that also is in the background, looking at how we can actually improve. But this is the whole idea why we invited everybody, is so, you know, I mean, people can actually have their input into it, and Tom will actually pick that one up, and we'll make sure that is on the agenda when we're discussing it further. Sinead, is that a legacy hand or you wish to speak?
No, that's a new hand. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, not everybody here will know my history. I'm born and brought up in Bradford, but when I was 14, I had to move down to Cambridge because of my dad's work. The family moved. I was trapped down south for 12 years before I managed to come back home. But having lived in Cambridge, and again, I was 14 when I moved down there, cycling is how we got about. I'm a confident cyclist. I lived cycling every day for 12 years as a mode of transport, as opposed to my childhood in Bradford, where it was a fun activity, it was a leisure activity. I come back to Bradford and it is literally terrifying riding a bike outside of a park in Bradford. What is anybody doing about driver education in order to make cyclists feel safe? Okay, there's cycle lanes, but a lot of the cycle lanes in our district are advisory, which is a waste of paint, and I'm sure the chair will agree with me on that one. The maintenance of cycleways is pointless. It just doesn't seem to happen. Even where there are wide roads and cycle lanes painted, it does not feel a safe place to cycle. What are we doing as Bradford and as Wyker, education-wise, for drivers to make cycling feel safer? That's my question.
Okay, thanks for that, Sinead. Tom, do you want to pick up on that one?
Yeah, I'm going to start by saying I'm not as close to the cycling work, Councillor Engels, as the other areas of work. So I can give you my response, but I think it would really benefit from getting involved in the webinar which is coming up, and also I can put you in contact with some of the direct officers from the who are working much more closely on the cycling space, because it feels like there's a separate conversation needed there. So. But I do think there's a lot of work going on through the City Connect programme to try and educate as much as possible. But I think there's more we can do in that space. So I think there's a webinar we're holding tomorrow night on cycling and what we can do as a region. And I would recommend we kind of come back to the walking and cycling, maybe at one of the future DCSE meetings, to get into that in more detail.
Okay. Councillor, I mean, we've got some further points. Andy has put quite good one. Councillor Michael Johnson has put 3 points. Please, Homewood features on the plan. I don't understand that one. Michael?
I think that's pleased. Homewood features on the plan.
Pleased. Right, okay.
That's what I took that as.
I'm so glad he's pleased. Yeah, he's my chair also, you know what I mean? So I'm so glad. And then Andy's put a quite long one. I mean, and Andy, I've always argued this, that if we're going to get people out of their cars, then, you know, we've got to actually make walking and cycling infrastructure, you know, accessible, well lit, safe for families, not just, you know, experienced cyclists like James and others just to actually hover up and down, but it's got to be family sort of orientated. You're absolutely right. I think it's going to be a long process because, you know, even looking at some of the data that we've collated, 65% of the journeys are actually completed by car at this moment of time. That's a massive number that we've got to tackle. But, you know, we're trying to chip away at it. I mean, some of these, you know, cycle lanes that went up in onwards, I think we could have thought a bit better. And I think that's what the whole idea is about this consultation, and your input is very vital into that. So thanks for that. Okay. Anybody else? Rebecca, your hands are still up. Is it those legacy hands or you want to come back in?
Hello, can I come in now?
Yeah, come on. Who?
Yeah, sorry, I'm on my phone because the laptop's not working, I don't think, at the moment. Can I just comment, please, on the fact that there is no bus service from Silsden to Skipton? There was a service, a very reduced service, many years ago, and that was taken away. And as you know, Silsden sits between Keighley, Ilkley and Skipton, and it's rather odd that we don't have a direct service to our neighbouring town. There are 2 secondary schools there that are attended by Silsden children. There's the Craven College, where it's, you know, which is the further education college that most children from Silsden will go to. And the problem is, of course, that there is no safe crossing to get to the railway station, and if at the railway station at Steeton, and if you live some distance.
Sorry, you're really quiet. I can't hear you.
Sorry, have you heard any of what I've said? Do you want me to start again?
No, we've heard most of it. It's just that last few comments you started fading away, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry. So what I'm saying is.
Sorry, Rebecca, we lost you altogether now.
Oh. Is that any better?
Very much.
Okay, so I was just saying about the limited service or the non-existent service, bus service from Skipton to Silsden. It's something that we had many years ago, and the only way to get to Skipton is going on the train. But the railway station at Steeton is about 1.5 miles away for a lot of people that live in Silsden, and there is no safe crossing to get to the railway station. There's a lot of talk about the footbridge or an underpass or some sort of safe crossing, but it hasn't materialised, and there's ongoing discussions. But in the meantime, the town, Silsden town, is left with no, direct service to its neighbouring town, which just seems ridiculous. There are 2 schools there. There's the further education college that's there, and and being able to, we should be able to access those places. And we have pushed time and time again for that direct service to be reintroduced, but it hasn't been. And there is a demand for that. And you could even have a service that went from Ilkley bus station via Silsden and then into Steeton and up to through some of the the villages on the way to Skipton. There are ways around doing it, and I think that would there's a lot of walking in the area, and I think all of that would promote a lot of things that we look to promote in Bradford Council's policies. But you need people to be able to connect to transport links, and they're just not there in the sort of semi-rural areas.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. I mean, I do a lot of cycling around that area, and yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there is a service from Keighley into Silsden. I mean, I've seen many a time a bus actually going into there, but you're right, I've never seen a bus from Skipton all the way to Silsden or Steeton. So, James, can you pick that one up?
Yeah, I mean, there is a direct service, a good service between Keighley and Ilkley, which is fine because Silsden is in the middle of the three towns. But one town is just completely exclude. It's hard to get to unless you have a bus. And also, if you want to cycle there, the still is links for cycling on the cycle path and on the tow path, and also whilst there's going to be able to connect to West Yorkshire, the West Yorkshire, that link needs to continue through to Kildwick. And not only is it having the money to upgrade those links, I know you cycle a lot on that towpath because I've seen you, and it's also there needs to be funding available for the maintenance of the towpaths that have already been upgraded because they're being used. It's great, they're being used all the time by cyclists, walkers, whoever. But you can see there are already patches that have recently been upgraded that will need to be repaired again in the near future. So it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
So those are just the points that I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. John, can you put yourself on mute, please? Because every time you say, how do you put it on mute, you keep on interrupting. John Prestige. Okay, right. Sinead, I've still got, I can still see a hand. Is there anybody else before I...
Is it my turn?
Yeah, go on.
I don't feel that I got an adequate answer as to what not only Bradford Council is doing, but what Wyker is doing and the public transit representatives present in this meeting are doing in terms of driver education to make the roads feel safer for cyclists. So I want to repose that question for that reason.
I think that's a fair question, and I think what I said before was that we have officers within the combined authority and within Bradford Council who specialise in that space and do a lot of the work in that space, and they're much better to respond to you on that than I am, because I don't work as closely in the cycling space. So what I'm going to do afterwards, Councillor Engel, is put you in contact with them, and then I think a further one-to-one conversation between you and the cycling officers can help kind of get into the driver education matters in more detail, if that's okay.
I think it should include.
I can't hear you.
You've gone on mute, Sinead. Sinead, you've gone on mute.
Sorry, no, I think Taj should be involved in all of those conversations, because not only is he a driver, but a bus driver and a cyclist and a pedestrian. He kind of ticks all boxes. He sees a lot of behaviour that I don't see. So yeah, I would love you to set that meeting up, but I would like Taj invited too.
Okay, thanks for that, Sinead, for just increasing my workload. And don't call me a bus driver in front of Raja. He will contest that. John.
Sorry, love you.
John.
I'll make you some pakoras to apologise.
Oh, no problem. John, you're on mute. John, you've now gone on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
First of all, can I apologise for not getting in, but I just the numbers I used wouldn't. I couldn't get on to the couldn't get into the meeting, and I've been a bit late. But and then one or two things I messed things up on the way up.
Okay.
On the way through, so there'll be somebody in the meeting who one of our councillors from Keighley East will be having a good laugh at me, what I've been saying now. Can I just say about cycling? I'm keen on cycling. I can remember as a young lad cycling from Rugby up through Yorkshire to the Dale, to the Lake District. But I get a bit, but I think what we've got to do as well is making sure there's safe cycling lanes. We've got to make sure there's safe pedestrians, because where I live in Keighley on Bradford, off Bradford Road, Keighley, when I'm walking on Bradford Road at Sandbeds, every day I have to tell people, cyclists, to get off the pavement and go on the cycling one. And the attitude to them, well, to be quite honest, I wouldn't. Some of the comments I wouldn't use on a building site. So can we have education to the cyclist as well?
Thank you for that, John. Yeah, I think that's also, Sinead was also asking the same kind of question, how we can actually do the educational side of it.
Yeah.
We are going to set up a meeting with the officers from Bradford and make sure that, that is high on the agenda. Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else on this item?
Chair, I think just to answer a couple of points from First Bradford's point of view in relation to cyclists, we have what we call a Smith System training program, which is an advanced, a simple way of putting it, is an advanced driver awareness course for our drivers. It takes into account things like cyclists and other things that can come close to the bus. We also do what we call a CPC course, and some of those courses, again, take into account education for drivers in relation to cyclists and how to watch out for them. And just to say that any cyclist who does complain, or anybody that makes a complaint with regards to cyclists, we do investigate these where necessary. We will obviously speak to the driver to get his or her point of view. And again, if needed, we can always request CCTV, which obviously either, the one thing about CCTV either backs up a driver or damns a driver, depending upon what the outcome of that is. But we always do investigate. We always try and respond back through our customer services to cyclists if they've had a problem. So for us, we do educate drivers through the programs that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, hi there. I'm from Arriva. Just to add on to what First Group do, we have very, very similar systems and processes. We also do both covert and overt assessments of our drivers, where we actually put somebody on the bus to monitor how they're driving and any negative driving behaviours, which is then followed up with coaching and training as appropriate. And similarly, we have very similar systems in place. Our risk manager is actually a very avid cyclist. So he regularly does cycling campaigns just to highlight our drivers' awareness of cyclists around them, particularly in the blind spots. So yeah, there is an awful lot of activity goes on within the companies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks. David, absolutely right. Agree with you. There are cycle lanes. I mean, even the superhighway between Bradford and Leeds. There is always an issue of parked vehicles where, when, especially in the residential type areas, and also at Biley, yes, there has been a number of complaints about Biley cycle lanes where vehicles are parked and people have to physically go on the road. That puts the cyclists and the other road users, car drivers, at risk. So we will be picking that one up also. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Slam.
Yeah. Thanks for that, James, for putting a good word in for us. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Sorry, I have to flick between the two screens because the amount of people that are on the meeting. So if I do miss somebody, just shout out. No? But Tom, that actually then concludes this item. You want to come back at one last time?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the comments. There's some really helpful ones in the chat function, and we'll be summarising all of these. But if you would be able to also send your comments in into the Your Voice page, which I've posted a link to. You can find on the website the survey form as well as the interactive map, and as well as being able to send an email direct in on any comments on the plan. I appreciate that a lot of the plan we're publishing is quite strategic, and there's an opportunity to kind of then come back with more detail at later stages. And really just the final thing I'll point out is the webinars which are coming up this week, which I posted a link to in the chat. If you scroll up in the chat, you'll find the link. And I would encourage anyone who's particularly interested in a particular mode to dial into those webinars where kind of industry specialists will be getting involved to talk through the plans for bus, walking and cycling, rail, and the like. So really encouraging people to get involved as much as possible. And thank you very much for the time today and for the broad range of questions we've had come in.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for that. Okay. I sincerely apologize. I think I missed the minutes on item 5. So is there any matters arising from the minutes on page 1, page 2, and page 3, page 4, page 5, and finally 6. Okay, thank you for that. Right, next one is item 6, Chair's update. But to be honest with you, there isn't much because the connectivity infrastructure plan is the one that was big on the agenda. We've been actually working around that. Also, the Bradford Forward plan, that's also out for consultation. And like we say, I know there's only a couple of days left, but if we can encourage people to actually give their suggestions and their feedback into that one. Currently, look, we are in a bit of a, for a year, we've been in a very difficult situation. The bus patronage or passenger numbers are actually still quite low. However, there is nearly 90% of the services are still running at this moment of time. Going forward, and I'm so pleased that the announcement of extra money that is going to be made available for improvement in the bus services. However, we are going to have a mayoral election, and how things are going to pan out after that, I'm not really sure. We will actually wait to see. That's almost everything that we have actually had a number of meetings regarding the bus working group, cycle and walking. We've now renamed it Active Travel Group. And that's all about how we can improve, accessibility to cycling and walking, There, I mean, just to give you an example, I wasn't aware that from Leeds side, when you're coming towards Shipley, there are a couple of barriers which you can't even get a cycle through because you would have to physically pick the cycle up. So these are the things that we are actually looking at, making sure that these routes are. Sorry, Peter. Peter, can you put yourself on mute? Oh, thank you. So that's my updates. Is there anything anybody wants to ask specifically? No. Thank you for that. Okay, you've got the information reports from page 7 onwards, and this is where we bring in. Is there anything? Andrew, are you taking the information report?
Yeah, I can do. I can either run through it briefly or go by exception, Councillor Salam. I can run through it briefly. So, so apologies that I missed a portion of the meeting, but in terms of the bus services, obviously the bus strategy publication last Monday has got us all reading very closely the detail to see how that's going to impact on us moving forward. But hopefully, as will have been discussed on the connectivity piece, partnership does seem very much to be the watchword here, and that's how we secure our portion of the big slice of money, £3 billion that the government has allocated to the bus strategy, and with a big focus on recovery. The reality is that bus patronage has massively suffered during this pandemic, and whilst there have been peaks and troughs, even the most optimistic reports suggest actually that the recovery, when we do get through a recovery, and here we're talking a year or two hence, will only potentially be at about 80% of the pre-pandemic levels. So we've got our work cut out to make the bus network as attractive as we possibly can, working in partnership with the operators to make that happen. Just to address one or two points that you might have been thinking about in terms of the combined authority pursuing franchising. We've not made an application for franchising at this stage. We've only had those powers for a number of months. The only combined authority in the country that has commenced pursuing the franchising powers is Greater Manchester across the Pennines. So that's where we're at. So in terms of the short to medium term, at least, and notwithstanding the political view moving forward as to how the mayor and councillors want to take this forward, we are looking strongly to pursue what we call an enhanced partnership with the operators, which means increased sharing of decision-making powers and increased responsibility for both the operators and for ourselves as a combined authority, but also for the district councils to look at how we can improve the bus offer. And that means everything through from integrated, simpler, and the bus strategy says cheaper ticketing, through to some of the bus priority measures that have been put across. And we're only too familiar with where potentially bus priority has perhaps been watered down because of the odd parking space here or there that for any number of reasons has had to be kept in or is argued to be kept in, which can have massive implications for any bus priority schemes. These tough decisions are the decisions that we're going to have to make moving forward if we're to secure the funding. So that's just a little bit of a background about the bus strategy. In terms of bringing things much closer to home, as it says in the report, we're anticipating, well, there will be a ramp up of bus services from the 12th of April when the non-essential retail reopens. Hooray, and hopefully never to close again. Let's see what happens. I don't want to even look at what's going on in France or Poland or anything like that at the moment. But we are, as the report says, liaising with the Department for Transport on how we move this recovery forward in terms of funding. We are in a position where we've agreed funding up until the end of June with operators. So we know that services will continue on their current footing, or well, with this ramp up, and will be funded until the end of June. From there on, that's where this work around recovery partnership and then enhanced partnership becomes really important. So we're now on the 22nd of March. We haven't got a lot of time, so we are very, very busy on that score. Just to move on, there's some information there around the Emergency Active Travel Fund. And whilst that's not my specialist area, I'm aware that that work is ongoing, and the consultation activity is going to be undertaken over the next few months to move that forward. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or any points that you want me to take back in terms of specific bus issues or broader bus issues. I'm sure the operators would be happy to lend their thoughts to anything that you've got as well. Go for it.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Anybody got any questions or comments?
Our Councillor Salam, everyone's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Yes.
Everybody's happy. There is also Appendix 1 to Item 7, the urban traffic management control, taxi schemes, Leeds Bradford Canal, City Connect, improvements to the canal towpath, Harrogate Road, new lane. So there is that appendix. Does anybody have anything to say on that one? No. Andrew, what have you done? Everybody's so happy. I'm so glad. Okay. Right, let's move on to operators update. Pete, since you were eager, I'll let you go first.
Okay, Chair, glad to. It's a busy old time for us, as you can imagine. We're now on our probably 8th timetable since COVID began, which is no mean feat since there's normally just 2 a year. And these are always designed to meet demand, but also to enable us to do some of the other things we need to do. And one of those things is training, because in the since March last year, we have not been able to train drivers, because there comes a point in any driver's career when they've got to take controls of the train, and you can't do that and remain socially distanced. This was a real issue, and a particular issue for Northern, because it's such a high proportion of training happens here. But thankfully, through works with the trades unions and with the safety people, we have now got a method of training, and that training is underway, has been underway since just after Christmas, and it's making a huge difference. And a special difference out of Bradford, because it enables us to use our new trains, because a lot of this is people driving these new trains more with much more cover than we did before. And in fact, they are now all in operation and all working, which is good news. COVID gives us other problems too, and not least the numbers traveling. If I tell you, we're currently between 15 and 20% of normal pre-COVID figures right across the piece. It changes from place to place, but generally that's that average is correct, and it's certainly correct in the Bradford district. Clearly, schools going back made a difference on the 8th, and particular thanks there to West Yorkshire, because they helped us with some standby buses out of Guiseley on an evening to enable the young people to get home on time, because it's currently an hourly service on that line. And frankly, with the numbers coming out of school, that was going to be a problem. So Wyker really came to the party there and helped us no end. And those buses will be in place. And this current timetable we're running now will be in place until the 16th of May, when a summer timetable comes into operation. That summer timetable is designed very much on the rebuilding in a post-COVID world. And initially, especially the market we expect back, first of all, which is the leisure market. So we need to ensure that we've got adequate coverage on the coast and connections to the coast, but equally to the Dales, Ilkley and places like that. So for us, it goes back during the day to an almost full timetable at that point. And we'll have further interventions to link in with the roadmap as we go forward. We'll have people on the ground certainly post the 12th to ensure that the return to non-essential retail works as we expect it to do, and also to enable those who work in non-essential retail to get to work. I know last summer when we did this, we found, I was at Meadowhall at that point, and we found more people travelling to Meadowhall to work in Meadowhall than actually shopping in Meadowhall at that early stage. So we need to make sure we get that right. Performance though is overall very good. Train service performance is very good. Well over 90% of trains arrive where they should do within 3 minutes of their scheduled time, and that's to every station. Clearly, we're running fewer trains at the moment, but we're still well over 70%, and in West Yorkshire as high as 80% of our pre-COVID mileage timetable, and performance remains strong, but it's always an ill wind that blows no good. We're using this time to make sure we understand where we have failures and we can make a difference and to prevent them happening again. Happy to take questions, but other than that, that's the update from Northern.
Thank you for that, Pete. That's brilliant. Thank you. Anybody got any questions to Pete? No? Okay, Dwayne?
Hello, yes. So an update from Arriva then. Our timetables were reduced in February in response to requests from the DfT to reduce mileage in line with the national lockdown. We've since restored our Monday to Friday service level to 100% of the pre-pandemic level. We are, of course, still running with reduced capacity for social distancing, and as such, we've got extra journeys on the network to support the busiest flows, particularly around schools. Like all industries, we have had some COVID-related staff absence, but we are fully staffed to deliver our registered services. And looking to the future, our Saturday service is still reduced, so it is our hope and our plan that we will resume 100% on Saturday when non-essential retail opens. So currently, obviously, forecast for the 12th of April. Yeah, we're currently looking forward to welcoming customers back on board. But for now, we'll continue to provide those essential journeys. That's the update from Arriva.
Thank you for that, Dwayne. Anybody got any questions to Dwayne? Masood, first.
Okay, thank you. To be quite honest, much the same as the other transport operators, we ourselves are currently back from the 8th of March at running a Monday to Friday service, obviously keeping an eye on that. With all our vehicles are done to government guidance and our own guidance in making sure that customers can travel safe with us and have confidence with travelling, where we clean our buses every 28 days with a Zuno product. Our passenger level numbers from our last meeting that we had were around the 50 to 55%. At the moment, they're around the 45%, so not quite back up pre the first, second lockdowns. But hopefully, as the levels start to rise from the 8th of March and with the 12th of April looming, we might see more of an intake or uptake, should I say, of passengers. A couple of things, we're still recruiting, so we haven't had many problems, but we are recruiting still. We're just slightly under what we call our establishment figure, but we're recruiting to bring in brand new bus drivers and or existing bus drivers. So that's still ongoing for us, where we're trying to just make sure that the levels do keep okay for the running of services. A couple of points I'll bring in from last one. Northern Power Grid, we did have a problem at that particular point. That was resolved straight after. Since then, we've been working closely with Northern Power Grid on the laying of the new cables from Haworth Road all the way down to Canal Road. At the moment, we're just about finished on that. A little bit of congestion around the Manningham Lane and Oak Lane area, but once that's done, then that will be the bulk of the work done in terms of the laying of the cables. They've just got what they call trenches and box joints to put together, which certainly won't have much of an impact on services other than minor delays. So that's good news there. Certainly ahead of schedule of where they wanted to be. What was the other thing? Some of you may or may not be aware of problems that we've been having in the Bradford South area with a lot of vehicles vandalised by youths throwing bricks, etc. We have worked closely with the Bradford South MP and with an inspector from West Yorkshire Police, where we've drawn up a list of things that can be done. So rather than the driver calling 101, they can now call 999 and get an immediate response, where the police will respond to any incident in the Homewood mainly, but any other area of Bradford South. We've certainly seen a decrease in that. The police have stepped up patrols in that area, so that has then, as I've just said, come down, where we've had a decrease of vehicles being vandalised. Still working quite closely with police on that, so hopefully those numbers will start to reduce, and I dare say it would get back to what we would probably expect, where we do get the odd bit of vandalism from time to time. And really that's it from First Bradford's perspective at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raja. Any questions to Mohammed? Kim, I'm really sorry I missed you. Did you have anything to add to Dwayne's report, or are you okay with that?
No, you're fine. Dwayne's covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Kim. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Jim?
Taj, can I come in on the Homewood situation?
Yeah, no problem.
And I've just put on chat that the 3 Tonwalk councillors, we had a meeting with Inspector Thornton, who's in charge of Bradford South. It was a very productive meeting. So just to give that update. Thanks, Taj.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. Okay, Jim?
Hi, yeah, we're doing an uplift from the 11th of April. That's on the 60 service airline and the 662 shuttle service. That'll take us very close to the pre-COVID levels, but not just there yet. We've introduced some new vehicles on our 66 Dalesway service. We've also rebranded our Wharfdale Links service, and we're just still working very hard keeping the vehicles clean. They're fogged every night and get clean after every trip out. So we're still clean and safe and ready to go. That's about just where we are at the moment.
Thanks for that. Very encouraging. Very good.
So I'd like to come in quickly if I could. As mentioned earlier, my 12-year-old daughter uses First Bus for her school run. Given that she goes from Ollerton to St Joseph's, she's funny, she's chosen a different route to my eldest. My eldest used to go down to Toller and then get a bus down from change bus there. My 12-year-old goes into town and gets a bus out. It's all fine on the morning school run, but when it comes to the afternoon school run, she repeatedly experiences buses being full before they get to her stop. And like I said, because of the ticket I buy her, she can't get on the Keighley shuttle buses. But aside from that, she's related to me a number of experiences where she's seen a first bus coming. Her and her friends have run for the bus, and the first bus driver has not acknowledged their attempts to get to the bus stop. Because when they can't get a bus from the stop outside school, they start walking towards where there are bus stops with more services. Now, my personal experience as a bus user is that the vast majority of bus drivers are just amazing, really lovely people. There seems to be a growing proportion of bus drivers who will wait at a stop when you get on with a small child. They'll wait until you are seated, so you're not travelling upstairs, with a toddler and what have you. But you'll either get the odd grumpy driver or a driver who's had a really, really bad day, and that impacts on the service they deliver. They're unhuman, and it makes me worry about the support that companies are offering their drivers, the emotional support, given the increased tensions endemic in the community at the moment. The other issue I want to raise is that, well, I live on the Pink Line bus route, and obviously the vandalism over in Ormwood, well, that's my bus line, even though I'm right the other side of the city. So when they're taken out, it affects us. And the other one is the Clayton services vandalism, the 636, 637. The vandalism, the attacks appear to be occurring within City Ward just before they come across into Clayton. But when these buses get taken out of service, the service users have no way of knowing. I mean, my own local bus stop, when I got a bus yesterday, there was no timetable and no QR code, just a blank piece of paper. I would like greater attention from First in terms of maintaining the information at bus stops, and greater information when buses are taken out of service because of vandalism.
I mean, what I can say from that perspective, Sinead, and I'm sure that Andrew would probably come in relation to the bus stops, etc. But from our perspective, when we do have to take vehicles out of service, as you can appreciate, it's always a sad thing to do for the customers, because we know that the majority of our customers are law-abiding customers who get on. But occasionally we have to do that, and what we try and do is minimise it as much as we can. What we do is that all our operations supervisors, if that decision has been taken, we then pass that on to Metro through what we call our disruptions list, so that they're aware of it. Then that can be shared amongst where vehicles are. In relation to when a bus does get vandalised, obviously that vehicle can't move with a broken window. We can't run a bus with glass inside the vehicle, so it has to be taken out of service. That vehicle is then brought back to depot, and once that driver's back with the vehicle, we'll get him another vehicle, and then obviously he will then resume the service wherever he's put back in.
Sorry, You've just said that when there's one of these incidents of vandalism that generally occur with a driver on board, they get back to the depot and you send them straight out again.
It depends.
For me, that would be a really, really distressing incident. You know, if you're the driver, you're worried not only about the vehicle and you're paying customers, your passengers, but yourself. And they've just been through that distressing situation. It's not a situation I've ever been in personally, but if I was, I would imagine that I would be shaking. Do you offer any support, emotional support, counselling to the drivers that have been through this situation?
I think the first thing to imagine is that when that does happen, it's not necessarily a big traumatic incident in relation to the driver themselves. What happens is that because the majority of vehicles are now double glazed in any case, it's only the outer window that shatters. So majority of them, they don't come through. What we do have, if any driver
Hang on,
does...
it's not about glass shattering, being distressed by an incident.
Sinead, what do you say? Let him have his say, and then you can come in.
So we do also have any driver who comes in, and if they want to sit down and discuss it with the operational supervisor there, they can do. We also have what's called an employee assistance program. So if any driver does have any concerns or worries about that, they can always ring up our helpline and they will help them. And if push comes to shove where the driver is so upset as what you've said, then that driver would be allowed to go home in any case, and so that then come back the next day. So every driver is an individual and every driver will respond differently to that. So you're right, some drivers will just take it as a pinch of salt and some drivers will take it where it's quite bad. So I do accept what you're saying. It really depends upon when the driver comes back to the depot. And when we say we get another bus out, that could be with a different driver and a different bus as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Masood.
I'll come back in on the bus stops, if I may, Councillor Salam. So I think, we as West Yorkshire Combined Authority have a comprehensive contract with our maintenance agency to get on top of any vandalisms, smash glaze of bus stops, offensive graffiti, etc. And we have sort of response times that they have to meet. So as soon as we get informed of anything, we process that information and we get them out. The question really is how quickly we get informed about issues that arise. And as long as we get that intelligence, we'll get on and deal with it. So in terms of members of the public, call Metroline. The telephone numbers are on every single bus stop. So call Metroline, we'll come out, we'll deal with it. So that's the first thing on the bus stop vandalism. And actually quite often it's bus drivers who are reporting through vandalism that they see to bus shelters and stops. And that's really helpful as well, because they're in many respects our eyes and ears on the network. Just to pick up, and I don't know whether this has been covered off and I missed it, but in terms of the ticketing piece, we are doing quite a large piece of work around what we call the fair deal for young people, which is about making multi-operator ticketing cheaper for young people across the piece. And we're looking to introduce that just before the summer, by which time, hopefully, the restrictions that currently exist on how many people you can have on buses have been lifted. So we are actually able to encourage kids and adults alike, more people to get on the bus. It's a bit difficult at the moment. We're just holding back because, as has just been described by Councillor Engel, there are circumstances where actually buses are full and there aren't necessarily loads more buses that you can chuck on them. And why are they full? They're full because we are legally obliged to adhere to certain capacity limits. So that's just to come back on that.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Okay. Anybody else got any questions to any of the operators or anything else? There is an announcement today about the new NPR station in Bradford. The press release will be actually going out as we are speaking at this moment of time. So you will get to know a new NPR station in Bradford that is being proposed. And this is to tackle the journey times. So from Bradford to Leeds, 7 minutes, Bradford to Manchester, 22 minutes. A very sort of, near enough site to Bradford interchange is being proposed, but I'll let you actually see it as it comes out in Telegraph and on some of the websites. By tomorrow, I think everybody should be able to access that. Okay. If there are no further questions or comments.
I have one more.
Okay, Sinead.
Yeah, it's something I texted you about yesterday regarding schools and their disciplinary policies. Many of the secondary schools now have a disciplinary policy where if you get X number of behaviour points, you get a same-day detention. Now, obviously, when you've got young people who are using the school bus service, the dedicated school buses, this creates a problem in how on earth do they get home? Because certainly with secondary schools, many young people within our district are not at a close school to their home. And I would like to pull together, as I said to you yesterday, Chair, I would like to pull together a meeting of relevant people, including the Education Department, because this is a transport issue. It is relevant for this meeting, but many of our young people do not grow up public transport literate. Many of our young people who get on the school buses have never been on a public bus before. So even though their bus ticket allows them to get on a public bus, they're unaware of what bus to get to where because their only experience has been the school bus. Now, obviously, there's an issue we need to take up with the schools themselves about this disciplinary policy, which I think is grossly unfair to parents, grandparents, carers, transport providers, actually, because it's the bus drivers who then get stuck with a kid who don't know where they need to go. They might have a bus pass. And I think that's quite a relevant issue for not only this committee, but children's services. And I would like it to be raised, because it's not just a Bradford issue. I would like this to be raised from our committee to Wyker Transport, please, if I may.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm sure Andrew's taken that.
Yeah. Can I just come back and just to check this, because I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. So this is you're specifically relating to circumstances where a child has been excluded from the school and has been right.
No,
so
right.
So what's the situation? They've been told they can't use the school bus.
No, let me explain it, Andrew.
Okay.
What Sinead is actually saying is that when there's a behavioral issue with a child, and the child is then actually put on detention.
Yeah.
They're either kept after school, and because a lot of the schools actually have dedicated services. So
yeah, the bus is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a bit of a background here. When I was at school, and I'm 42, so I'm probably of an age with many of you.
Sinead.
Sorry, Chair.
Let me just finish your point. Yeah. So what Sinead is saying is that a lot of the young people, that are actually using dedicated services, not necessarily are literate on some of the routes.
I get it. Yeah.
To their house. So
and they have to get the public bus to then, or public buses to then get home, because actually it may be that where they live is not served by one public bus. They've actually got to change somewhere, and they haven't been given any education about, well, actually your school bus is gone, but now you've got a detention, so you've just got to work out how you're going to get home, and they don't know. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely, that's one I'll take away.
There's more than one issue here. Yeah, their school bus ticket does work.
Yeah, I get that.
On the general public transport. However, these young people are not public transport literate.
Yeah.
The big issue I have, and I think it's worthy of transport providers getting in on this argument, right? When I was a kid, schools were not permitted to keep a child for more than 10 minutes after school without 24 hours prior written notice to the parents. These days, the secondary school's behaviour policies are a dystopian nightmare, if I'm honest, right? So I've had a situation last week where this kid, he was in class.
Go away.
He was in a test in class, and he read aloud the test question, right? He got a behaviour point from the teacher for speaking during a test, even though he was just muttering aloud to himself. And he has diagnosed issues, right? So he got a behaviour point for that. When he challenged this with the teacher and said, "Oh, I wasn't speaking in class, I was just reading it aloud to myself," he got another behaviour point.
Sinead,
later on, towards the end of the class, he took out his planner to see what his next lesson was, and he got another behaviour point. That led to an automatic 1 hour same-day detention. Okay?
Sinead, I don't want to be rude. I think we get the point where you want to get a meeting together, and we can all, with the operators. The only problem that we're going to have is that the operator...
Well, my big problem is the schools, actually.
That's it. So what I'm saying is we can actually help from our point of view, from Wyker, from Bradford Council, from First, Arriva and Transdave. The problem that we're going to have is, like Andrew said, that area that child is living at may not be served by a bus or one bus or even two buses or even three buses that they may have to change.
Yeah.
So if you get a meeting together, I'm sure we are more than happy to actually, tap into that.
Like I said, this is not a bus problem, except it is a public transport problem for these children and young people.
No, but the question in my mind,
Okay.
If I just finish with this, and I will take it away because I think Councillor Salam's right, this is a multi-agency thing that needs to be considered here. But from my perspective, what I will do is I will just go back and I'll talk to my education transport colleagues, because I just think in terms of safeguarding, maybe there's something around this. I appreciate it's after schools have gone, but we just, and if it's same day, if you're talking closed school bus services, do the providers know that they're not going to carry that child on that day? How does that information flow? So there are a few things here that, without wishing to get into chapter and verse now, I just want to take away and consider with colleagues, if that's all right. And we might give you a call about it, if that's all right.
I love that. And I'm sorry, Taj, but I felt it was worth raising.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah, no, good point. John, did you want to come in very quickly? You're on mute, John.
Oh, am I okay now?
Yeah.
So on this particular issue, I wasn't going to come in, but I think Sinead was mentioning about about the bus companies, etc. But I think also the parents have got to educate the children how to use the buses. Because these days, there's so many children have never used a bus until they've had to get one for school, because they're carried about in a car all the time. And I think, it's education all the way around. And also, can I just make a point? When people speaking, can they not have a cigarette make sure they don't have a cigarette in them? Because I thought these meetings were unspoken.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Yeah, that's
if it's me, it's a pen. I can 100% guarantee you it's a pen.
No,
yours is a pen, but there's a certain councillor had a cigarette in hand.
Okay, John, thanks for that. Sorry, Dwayne.
Chair, wonder whether I could come in as well. So it's of course not just an issue for detentions, but also extracurricular activity that may take place after school. So there are some examples, particularly in the Wakefield district, where we run sort of mop-up services, which will cover a range of different routes that we run sort of from the school at closing time, and then a mop-up service an hour later that does a full circuit. Just one of the ideas as to how we can facilitate that. So definitely worth the conversation, and we'd like to be part of that.
Okay. Thanks for that, Dwayne. Okay.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to bring in.
Go on, John.
As far as Keighley Bus Company is concerned, can I say how courteous the bus drivers are on the route, on all routes? And can I just say also, as far as courtesy is concerned, I've had a number of people comment to me in my area that when they've been getting near the bus stop, the drivers stopped and asked if they wanted to go on the bus. Sometimes they didn't, but this is the courtesy that we get in Keighley from Keighley Bus Service. Sorry, I'm not having a dig at you, Chair, I've had it over the years, but seriously, the Keighley Bus Services, I think they're doing a good job.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. That's good to hear.
Jim, he's a former councillor. He's looking for something. I'm not.
All right. Okay.
Oh, he's looking for
something out for him.
I'll tell you that now. He would never praise the bus company, right? He's a councillor, former councillor. He's definitely looking for something.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to chip in here.
No, Sinead, I'm going to finish this meeting because we're going over time. Thank you very much.
All I'm chipping in with is that John Prestige does not have any vested interest in anything. He's just a good man.
Oh, hey, very good.
Right. Listen, I mean, James did put in the chat, Sinead, for your information only, that, also, is that if there were safe cycling routes to the schools and from people's, kids' homes, without the fear of traffic, that, these kids could actually then benefit from active travel, and also they would actually be, this question that you've raised, Sinead, would also actually educate them on the road uses and everything else. It's in the chat if anybody wants to have a look at it. But if there is nothing else, I thank you very much for bearing with us. We've had a bit of a longer meeting because item 9 was very crucial, and also the updates and everything else. I hope everybody stays safe. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we will actually see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Dominic. Cheers.